Is your otherwise typical child acting like, I don't know, a flaming turd lately? This morning, my little darling who loves me with all her heart told me that she hates the sound of my voice almost as much as she hates me. Hmm, maybe I shouldn't have offered her breakfast the way I did. I can see how that could set somebody off, right? No, it's not right. That got me to thinking, as a mom of 8 and a teacher with 18 years in the classroom, all the things that set kids off that don't seem like they're that big of a deal to us. Well, I'm going to help you crack the code of why your little one might be acting the way he or she is, and some of the different reasons I've run across through the years. The last one may surprise you. I believe that understanding where behavior is coming from can certainly help us find the best way to address it. So, without any further ado, here are 20 reasons why your kid is acting like an a-hole. No, wait, let's rephrase that. Let's do, here are 20 reasons why your child is acting out. Number 1, lack of sleep. Just like adults, kids get crabby when they don't get enough rest. What's different, though, is the reasons why kids might not be getting enough rest. Some are still working on nighttime toileting, others are plagued by bad dreams or night terrors. They might even have pinworms. Look it up if you don't know the details of that one. But whatever the case, kids have issues when they don't get enough sleep. We see it in the classroom for sure. You might want to check on how much sleep your child is getting. And if they're a snorer, check with your pediatrician about getting a sleep study. Number 2, illness. Your child might be suffering with constipation, a bladder infection, tooth pain, or any number of ailments that they just don't know how to talk to you about. So if your child just doesn't look right or seems off, the first thing you can do is ask them if any part of their body is bothering them or just doesn't feel right, and definitely follow up with the pediatrician. Number 3, academic stress. Now, as a teacher, this one's a big deal for me because the last thing that I ever wanted to do was add stress to my students' lives. But the fact of the matter is, in this day and age, there is a lot of academic pressure. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to try to scale back what I really want to say. But just realize that even if your school is trying to keep things positive, and not overemphasize all of the standardized testing and the expectations for academic growth, yada, 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 there is still pressure. The kids feel it because the teachers are feeling it, and it doesn't necessarily come from the building level, it's coming from above. If you feel like your child is experiencing stress and agitation due to academic stress, please definitely share that with their teacher, because most of us do try to do anything we can to mitigate the problem if we know there is one. How do you feel about all of the testing and academic pressure we're putting on students today? I would love it if you'd leave something in the comments below so we can start that discussion. Number 4 is peer issues. Now, as adults, we've developed the coping skills for dealing with issues we might have with our peers or coworkers. Kids are still learning those coping skills. So if they've been shunned by a peer or had a fight with a friend or were embarrassed by something that happened at school, they will carry those feelings home with them long after the event has occurred. And they bring it to you because you're their safe space. So that's where you're going to see the behavior. You definitely want to just let them know that you're there for them and that you can tell something's bothering them, and just try to open the door for communication so that you can give them some feedback and guidance. Now, with teenagers, they are living a much more difficult life than most of us led as teenagers. There's a lot for them to deal with that they're not yet mature enough to understand, even though they think they understand everything. When they come home and blow up at you, it's because, again, you're their safe space. But what you have to do with these guys is let them know that you can tell there's something bothering them and you're there for them if they want a distraction or want to talk to you about it. However, they're not allowed to talk to you in a way that's rude or disrespectful. You're willing to be their dumping ground for their feelings. You are not willing to be in the crosshairs. The number 5 thing that can cause unruly child behavior is changes, both big and small. Sometimes when there's a lot going on, we find ourselves distracted and just assuming that the kids are cruising along on autopilot because, these are grown-up problems. But the kids perceive them. They certainly perceive big changes like family changes, divorce, new babies, and things like that. Elderly parents moving in. These are all big changes that can cause stress even when they're happy things. Also, though, little changes can affect behavior. Maybe there was a teacher who had a baby at school and now they've got a long-term substitute and everything they felt confident in and secure in is gone. And they don't know if the rules have changed or is this person going to like me? Do they understand that I have an allergy to red food dye? These are the things that they will worry about. And they bring their stress home, and because they are just little immature children, they're going to sometimes act out, either at home or at school. Number 6, attention seeking. Kids are constantly growing and changing, but what does not change is their need for attention. And while we have all of our grown-up stuff going on, such as money issues, marriage issues, health issues, all the things that we might be worried about, the kids can sometimes feel like they're fading into the background. Please try to find a small but significant chunk of time each day to dedicate to just your child. Incidentally, the simple distractions of parents consumed by their cell phones, and I'm not talking about doing your banking or something that needs to be done. I'm talking about just playing on your cell phone for an extended period of time when your child is sitting right there, makes them feel so invisible and so unimportant. And if you don't believe me, look up the term phubbing and see what you find out. Be aware of what your nonverbal behavior is communicating to your child. This is an easy thing to fix, so you might see a change in behavior right away. Number 7 is family stress. If family members are having a lot of disagreements or serious conversations, kids can become anxious and stressed because they don't know the context. Their imaginations can run wild. You may just be talking about refinancing your home, and in their mind, somebody's dying. You just never know what they're thinking. So if your child is acting anxious and you know that there have been conversations going on around the house, make an effort to sit down with your child and ask them if they have something on their mind. To prevent this, keep the grown up conversations private. Think about where and when they take place. You may have to do some strategic planning to make that happen. And also resist the temptation when you are sitting down with your child to arm them with information. This is not always a best practice because there are some things that they are just not mature enough to deal with. Number 8, a mini empath or extra sensitive child. My little 4-year-old is a classic empath. If somebody in her preschool class is upset, she is upset right along with them. If mom's having a bad day and sheds a tear or two, she is right up there offering me her little blanket to make me feel better and shedding a tear or two herself in the process. If you know that you have a kiddo like this and there's tension in the house on any particular day or for an extended period of time, make sure you sit down with that little one and let them know that grown-ups have bad days too, and that she is safe and she is going to be just fine. It can also help to give them something to do to make the person feel better, because then they have a sense of power over a situation when essentially they probably really are powerless. Number 9 is one of my favorite, boredom. Some kids are just classic stimulation seekers or stove touchers, which you might want to call them. These guys might as well have a little cloud above their head that says, "Watch this." They love to make things happen. And I don't know if it's mean spirited or misguided creativity, probably depends on the moment, depends on the kid. But these little crap stirrers just have to have something to do. So you definitely want to channel those tendencies in a positive direction. Sports are an obvious choice, martial arts, something where those bodies can move and they can make things happen and get that physical contact. However, you might have a kid who's an inside kid In that case, you can get them into science exploration. But as you probably already know, these guys need constant supervision, especially if they're doing something like that. Otherwise, your house might get blown up. Number 10 is influence. TV, video games, friends, other family members even can teach your child behavior that you didn't teach them and wouldn't normally condone. If your child is trying out some spicy language or behavior that you've never seen before and you do not like, my advice to you is to resist the urge to swoop in with a punishment and instead go in with the curiosity. Ask questions so you can find out what the source is. You can say things like, "Who do you know who speaks that way?" Or "Where did you learn that word?" "Who do you know who acts that way?" And don't sound condemning. You need to sound genuinely curious. You're more likely to get the truth that way. And acknowledge that some families, shows, and groups do behave in ways that we don't, and that's okay for them. But that while they're in your house and your child, your expectation is that they are going to behave the way that you have taught them. You also can let them know that when they're adults, they will be free to choose how to behave and how to expect their own kids to behave. Sometimes kids are happy just knowing that someday they'll get to say those words. Number 11 is not understanding expectations. Think about the first time you took your child to a movie theater. You probably told them what to expect, that it would be dark and that they would have to stay in their seat and that we don't use our big outside voice. We use a whisper voice if we have to say anything. You probably set them up with some really strong expectations. But do you do that when you go to Target? Do you do that when you go to the grocery store? You should, every time. Because if you let them know things like, are they going to be riding or pushing if they're small enough? Will they be helping to pick things out? Is there a chance for a treat at the end? How far away can they get from you? And how many times should you have to call them before they return to you, should they forget? If you have all of these things in place, you will have a much better chance of a successful outing with your child without the behavior. And I will tell you this, when they do mess up, and they will sometimes, you'll know that it wasn't because they didn't understand what they were supposed to do. Just because I think it's funny and I can't believe I'm about to put this out there into the world, there was a trip to Target recently and it was so horrific. And it wasn't just me, it was me, the two little girls, and my mom went along, either for moral support or to laugh. I'm not sure which, but I took a selfie at the end of it so I could remember exactly how I felt. Here it is for your enjoyment. Number 12 is inconsistent parenting. Speaking of knowing expectations ahead of time, kids need to know the rules of the home. They need to know that they're going to be the same rules, whether they're talking to one parent or caregiver or another. Otherwise, they feel a little lost. Think about when you've learned how to play a board game and you've had to learn the rules as you go along. It leaves you questioning yourself, fearful of taking a misstep on every turn. It makes you feel insecure. And insecurity is a complicated feeling. What do we know about kids and complicated feelings? They make them act out. So the kids are going to push your buttons. They're going to pout. They're going to play one caregiver against another caregiver. They're not going to thrive in that situation because they're constantly trying to figure things out. Number 13 is testing boundaries. That little girl I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the one who hated me, she is a classic stove toucher, which I mentioned earlier. And she always wants to know where the line is. And she walks right up to it and blows a proverbial raspberry at it every time. The boundaries are what make kids feel secure. They give structure to their lives. And kids like her, they just need to know that they're still there. They're just checking and testing all the time. Those are often some of the most insecure kiddos. And they have their reasons, I promise. But it's our job to work through it with them and support them and guide them. So when Ellie is about to jump on the couch and she gets that look in her eye, and I know what's about to happen, I try to stop and put the power on her to identify the boundary instead of me naming it. I say, "Oh, what's our rule about jumping on the couch?" And then she'll tell me the rule. And then I'll ask her to tell me, why do we have that rule? And she'll explain that, which helps to solidify that connection between the boundaries and safety. And it gives her a little more power in this situation, which is something that kids like this crave. Number 14 is a lack of skills. Sometimes when kids are given a task that they don't know how to approach or manage, they're going to act out. That's just their way. So if a child is asked to clean their room, for example, and they don't yet have the file in their brain to pull out to break down the task into smaller parts, they might explode. So it is much better to be more concrete and less vague and break the task into its smaller components for them. Give them one piece at a time. You can even give them a checklist with pictures if they're not yet reading, or simple sentences if they are reading. Number 15 is an internal struggle to process an event or a situation. Realize that these are not little adults and that they just don't have the skills that we have developed through our years on this earth. So if there's a big event going on, like their best friend moved away, you're probably going to see some behavior. It might even be something as simple as seeing an adult fall down in a parking lot. That's a big deal to some kids because grown-ups aren't supposed to do that. So they might really turn that over for a while in their mind, and it could be a distraction and a problem for them. So once more, get in there and find out what's on their mind. Number 16 is exerting independence. Many of us have little ones who just have to try things for themselves. They do not want your help, even if you know that at the end of the day, you're going to have to come to the rescue. Let them try it, let them get as far as they can, praise their efforts, and be available to help when needed. Number 17 is big emotions. Just as adults can lose it when they're overloaded, kids too can hit the wall when they've got more emotion inside of them than they have the bandwidth to deal with. And they're going to do it a lot more often than we are, and probably a lot more openly, loudly, maybe in some cases violently than we do because they just haven't developed the self control. When this happens, just understand where it's coming from the best you can and help them through it with strategies such as deep breathing and counting, and sometimes just holding them. Number 18 is underlying conditions. As I said at the beginning of this video, I'm mostly talking about neurotypical children here. However, if the behavior that you are experiencing is occurring across several settings and over an extended period of time, it's certainly worthy of bringing up to your pediatrician so that he or she can point you in the right direction and have it evaluated. It may be that your child just needs somebody to talk to. It could also be that there's a medical cause at the root of the behavior, such as ADHD. I strongly encourage you, even if you have a little bitty feeling deep, deep down that there might be something wrong, to check into it sooner than later, because in some instances, early intervention can make all the difference in the world. Back to our list, though. Number 19 might surprise you a little bit. It's excitement and anticipation. Have you noticed that some holidays, birthdays, and special events just come with a side of bad behavior? Well, sometimes kids just cannot contain it. They're like a soda that's just been shaken up. They've had all this buildup and all this excitement leading up to this day, and they're just about to pop. So, talk with your child when you see that going on and tell them you notice they have a little extra energy and channel that into something positive. Ask them to run around the house a few times. Ask them to do some jumping jacks. Ask them to sing their favorite song as loud as they can or have a pillow fight. Do something so that they can put that energy to good use before they get themselves into trouble. The last cause for behavior that I want to talk about that I said might even surprise you is your kid is normal. Your kid is normal. At different ages, there are just behaviors we have to accept as part of growing up. For example, 2 and 3-year-olds trying to experiment with independence, they're going to throw tantrums. 4 and 5-year-olds are really going to struggle to share. Preteen kids, they're going to want more privacy and they might not always be very polite about it. That's normal. Teenagers are going to pull away from you as they are trying to be even more independent. And they're going to be taking more risks because that is normal. It's hard to be a parent, and I'm right there in the trenches with you. Yes, I'm the teacher in your corner, but as I've said before, I am also the parent in your corner. I hope you found some content in today's video that helped you to maybe get a different perspective on where your child's behavior is coming from. If you'd like to see more parenting advice or even some content for your kiddos, try visiting our channel and subscribing. While you're there, drop a note in the comments to let me know what you'd like to hear more about. As for me, I need to go check in with Ellie and see how she feels about me now.